All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're just past 5:30. There's a few more people that are just filing into the hall. Ask that you do that quietly and try and fill out these spaces further out at the end of the hall, just so we can get everybody in comfortably. But we will make a start because we do have a lot to get through in the next 2 hours and quite a few people to have their say on this important issue. So good evening and welcome to tonight's public meeting. I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. My name is Michael Steadman and I've been asked by the Hobart City Council to act as the independent chairperson for this evening's meeting. As you came in tonight, you may have collected a bundle of material from the desk in the entry foyer, and included in that is the agenda, the meeting rules, a summary of written submissions and frequently asked questions that have been prepared in response to the common themes that have been raised through the public comment period. If you don't have a copy of these, they can be accessed using the QR code on the screen, which will shortly be shown, and there may also still be some at the front of the room. I recognise that this meeting has generated a lot of interest and many of you will have followed these matters closely, but there may be others in the room that are here tonight to hear about this issue for the first time. And I ask that we are respectful of everyone's viewpoints and opinions, and we ask too that you extend the courtesy of listening to speakers in silence, whether you agree with them or otherwise. We want this to be a constructive meeting where everyone feels safe to express their points of view, and we'll endeavour to provide everyone that's attended tonight with an opportunity to participate. However, this is only a 2-hour meeting, and as I said at the start, we've got a lot to get through, so a big part of my role will be to try and keep things moving. So I'll quickly run through how tonight's meeting will run and the various aspects of it. We'll start by hearing from council staff and then the lead petitioner. We'll then have 30 minutes to take contributions from the floor. We want to get through as many people as possible in that time period, so I ask you to keep your points short, clear and relevant to the subjects contained within the petition. Please also have regard to the questions that have already been answered in the Q&A, because that may give you answers to questions and allow for others to have their contributions. If you hear a little bit of a ding from a bell, that's your warning that your time is nearing an end, and you'll need to finish what you're saying and allow others to come to the front. So that we can ensure a balance of people speaking for or against this issue, the microphone on my right will be for people speaking for the proposed bike lane trial, and this microphone to my left against. So I'd ask that when the time comes, you make your way in an orderly fashion to form a line alongside the flanks of the stage to line up for those questions, and I'll take one alternating from either side for that half-hour period of contributions. If there's anybody who has a mobility restriction who would like to speak, please make yourself known to one of the many people in the room in high vis, and we'll bring a microphone to you and attempt to accommodate you in that process. Rest assured that all of you will have the opportunity to speak with your vote on the motions, even if you don't get an opportunity to speak during that half-hour period. And the reason why we're working hard to keep us to the agenda is that we want to give people as much time as possible to deal with the motions. There are 4 that have been submitted prior to the meeting, and some have been combined because they cover very similar subject matter. And you'll find the wording for those motions in the agenda. In the interest of time, we'll not be allowing any amendments or additional motions from the floor, and I will detail further the process for speaking to and voting on those motions when we get to that part of the agenda. We'll now move to item 2, and I'll pass over to Neil Noy, the Council's Director of Strategic and Regulatory Services, who will provide you with an overview of the Transforming Colins Street project, and with him is Daniel Vidal, the Manager, City Mobility. And I ask that you hold questions that you may have for both of those gentlemen until we get to that part of the agenda. To Neil.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for attending to tonight's meeting. I appreciate there's a lot of interest in this project, reflecting the attendance tonight. So the purpose of my presentation is fundamentally to answer these following questions for you. So why Colins Street and why separated lanes for cyclists? Why take a tactical trial approach? What is actually involved in the proposal, so some of the detail for you, what's involved with monitoring and evaluating the trial, and what's next. So Colins Street, so why Colins Street? Colins Street has been identified for a number of years as an important linkage, cycling linkage into the CBD and beyond. As far back as 2009, it has been identified as such. It obviously connects to the Hobart Rivulet Linear Park, which dissects West Hobart and South Hobart, and connects on to Mount Wellington, Kunani, Mount Wellington. So there are a number of other more recent strategic work that Council has done that has reflected the importance of Colins Street for this connection. But this following map provides potentially a greater context for that connection. We have already installed laneways, cycle lanes in Argyle and Campbell Street, which roughly gives us a north-south connection through the city and to the northern suburbs. We've also got connections to the south into Sandy Bay and Battery Point. We don't have a dedicated connection through the city from the west west to South Hobart and the like. And as indicated before, Colins Street is a natural connection into the Hobart Rivulet Linear Park, which provides a separated, dedicated trail into South Hobart and beyond. It also, as indicated before, this image does present an indication of the wider connection into many and wonderful trails and tracks into the Kunani Mount Wellington Park and also Knocklofty. So it gives you some context as to why this represents an opportunity to enhance that network and, importantly, build towards a completely connected network. This infographic, just to provide some context around emissions levels in terms of transport choice, but also importantly the amount of space one needs for transport alternatives. As we, in the Hobart context, we have limited space. We don't have options to expand necessarily our road network. We are constrained, physically constrained. And it's important to take those factors into consideration. But the top infographic just looks at the emissions levels for the various transport modes. As you can see, public transport and active transport has lower emissions levels. This is obviously pretty important consideration in the context of climate change. And the lower infographic does illustrate the amount of space per person moved, which demonstrates that public transport and active transport options are far more efficient in terms of space allocated than separate vehicle use. So it gives you some context. Importantly, as cities grow, we've got to become smarter and more efficient with how we move people, and creating alternative options that are more efficient is a reasonable proposition for all growing cities. In terms of the Collins Street and what we currently see in terms of bicycle and micro-mobility use at the moment, in February, the top February example, week in February that was taken, provides us an indication that there's an average of 415 cycling or micro-mobility riders using Collins Street each day. Importantly, and the lower table indicates the gender diversity of that ridership, with males representing twice as many female riders, and so which comes to my next slide, and that's reference to the Tasmanian Government's design guidance for walking, wheeling, riding. And the first infographic provides an indication of people's comfort levels around cycling. So we've got approximately 18% of the population in Tasmania feel reasonably comfortable that they can ride on our roads. Importantly, 45% either not able or not interested. But there's a significant cohort of 37% that are actually interested but concerned in riding within the state. And most of that concern relates to safety of riding, and particularly mixing it with vehicle traffic and the like. And so the state government guidelines set out what would represent a safe design solution, and significantly the significant option around that is separated cycleways. There are alternatives, and we are looking to employ one of those alternatives in this trial to establish, as a trial, to establish whether it is actually a workable solution in this context. So why take a tactical trial approach? Well, importantly, it allows us to test these potential solutions. It's cheap and fast to implement. We're not setting things in concrete. We are allowing ourselves to modify, if necessary, to trial other solutions. And it's a recognised way to start a conversation around change. So what is involved in terms of the details of design? So Council in September last year endorsed an overall proposal for the street length between Mole Street and Murray Street. They subsequently sought an additional report for the section between Victoria and Murray Street that allowed for greater retention of car parking spaces. So, and that will be the subject of a further report that will be considered by Council next Monday. But they have settled on a trial design for the Mole through to Victoria Street, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail for you. So in relation to the block between Mole and Barrack Street, we have a separated bicycle lane on each side of the street. Importantly, we retain loading zones in this location for the businesses in that location, and we retained modest amount of on-street car parking, 8 spaces in total. For the next section between Barrack Street and Harrington Street, again a separated bicycle lane on each side of the street. We are importantly increasing accessible parking spaces to 2 in this section, and we're retaining 17 car parking spaces on this section. On the next block between Victoria and Harrington Street, and this is probably the one with the greatest change, we're proposing to incorporate a shared lane on each side. So this is an alternative solution, but with a 30-kilometre speed limit. So we are proposing that this is a shared low-speed environment with a outdoor dining options adjacent to food premises on the northern side of the street, as well as retaining 3 car parking spaces. Also, we're proposing to include a zebra crossing at the intersection with Victoria Street, and also narrowing the exit out of Victoria Street to 1 lane to improve the safety and of the crossing. Yep.
I think is the CEO prepared to cede a little of his time to just wind up this section of the meeting? We're trying to be even-handed to everyone here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sari. So in terms of what's involved with the section between Victoria and Murray Street, as indicated, this will be the subject of a further report to Council next Monday. What we're proposing to do as an officer recommendation is continue this shared arrangement into the next section, retaining most of the car parking options with minor modifications to some of those. Again, retaining or reducing speed limits to 30 k's and having a bike section, small bike section, lane section at the intersection of Murray Street. Quickly moving on, clearly this is a trial. We need to monitor and evaluate the trial. There will be ample opportunity for people to provide their feedback on this through Your Say Hobart website. This feedback will be collected at 5 stages. The first stage, with the pre-installation baseline survey, has already been conducted. We'll also undertake it after 1 month of installation, 3 months, 12 months and 2 years. There are 7 agreed success metrics that Council have endorsed, and quickly they relate to the number of bike and micro-mobility riders, diversity of users, increased access for people walking, road safety, overall road safety, user confidence, feedback from local stakeholders, including users of the street and businesses, and feedback from the broader community. Quickly, it's important to understand, to have some perspective in relation to this, and Council needs to balance the needs of many different groups, as we've got here tonight. Importantly, it's important to understand that the space allocated in terms of areas for the different mobility types in Colins Street between Mole and Harrington Street under this trial is that 51% will still be allocated to motor vehicles. They still will be able to move down the street, moving up and down the street. Pedestrians is 31%, and the space allocated to bicycle lanes is 18%. All right, so what's occurred to date and what is next? So just rounding up. So Council has made the decision back on 16th of December to proceed with the trial. We've engaged, we've undertaken detailed engineering work, we've engaged a contractor, and work has commenced on the Mole Street to Victoria Street section. As I indicated, the pre-construction engagement and metrics has been undertaken, gathered, and the Your Say site will be used for, as I indicated, periodic engagement. And as previously indicated, the section between Victoria Street and Murray Street, the alternative option for that one will be considered at next Monday's meeting. So an important part of the Transformation Collins Street project is to stimulate discussion about the future changes that could be made to Collins Street, and I certainly welcome people's involvement with this process. So thank you, and hopefully I've answered those questions that I put at the start of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I'll now hand over to the CEO, Michael Stretton, to provide an overview of the submissions that were received during the public comment period.
Thanks very much, Chair. So the Council invited the public to make submissions for 21 days as required under the Act. So I can advise the room that during this period we received 327 individual submissions with multiple submissions concerned and raising the same issues. 167 submissions were not supportive of the trial and 151 submissions were supportive of the trial. So the key issues that have been raised through the submissions have been incorporated into the FAQ document, which is available to you all tonight. And I can advise the room that the key themes that were identified in the submissions were parking and traffic flow and how it will be affected, the timeline for the project, providing feedback, evaluation of the project, funding for the project, how will people with mobility issues be accommodated, what will be the impact on the rest of Collins Street beyond Murray Street, whether Centrepoint car park can or will be open longer, what other options have been considered, for example, widening the footpaths, can and will Collins Street bike lane be connected to the intercity cycleway, and finally, have local businesses been consulted about on-street dining?
Thank you, CEO. And you will find that those questions are covered in the FAQs that we mentioned at the start of the meeting. So if you're seeking the Council's response to those questions, you'll find that in the document or at the QR code. So I'll now invite the lead petitioners to speak to their concerns, and obviously that is what's gathered us all here tonight for this meeting. We have Edwin Johnston to my left, and I understand that he'll be joined by Andrew Edwards. They'll be given a combined 10 minutes to put their side forward. And after this, we will move to contributions from the floor. So now would be a good time to quietly make your way to the relevant microphone if you do wish to line up to speak. And I'll remind you again, those wishing to speak in favour of the trial to my right, and those against to my left. Thank you. Thanks, Edwin.
Thanks everybody, my name's Edwin Johnston, I'm from the Confederation of Greater Hobart Business, and welcome everyone that's come here tonight. The current dual bike lane proposal for Collins Street in Hobart CBD is not practical or warranted, with residents, visitors, businesses and property owners all having genuine concerns. While there are many issues I could touch on, the three main areas of concern I will talk about are the practicalities, the lack of consultation and the so-called justifications. When it comes to practicalities, the main concerns are congestion and traffic flow. This is before we even talk about bus stops, accessible loading zones or parking. The recently commissioned report by respected traffic engineers Midson Traffic raised multiple concerns about the project's impact on traffic flow and congestion. The report states the proposal is not warranted. It goes on to say the removal of dedicated turning lanes at key intersections is a fundamental change to the CBD and will create, amongst other things, increased waiting times at intersections, reduced intersection capacity, especially during peak hour, and have greater potential for gridlock in the CBD. A common myth that is being pushed is that this current campaign is about only being able to park directly outside a business, or that we are advocating for more cars. This is incorrect. Whether it be scrambled crossings, bike lanes, loading zones, bus stops or clearways, the focus should always be on ensuring the most efficient and practical use of our current road network. When discussing parking, it is important to note that every on-street parking spot is an accessible park, used by those who are less able or need quick access. While the use of multi-storey car parks should always be encouraged, not everyone has the mobility or the time to use them. The proposal needs to consider people with mobility issues, our ageing population and our inadequate public transport system. It must also be recognised that this area is still the main part of the central business district. With regards to consultation, or lack of, consultation is not being told something is happening and then being lectured about how it is supposedly good for us by people who have never run a small business, while all at the same time letting us know how good bike lanes are in Amsterdam. People have been quick to point out the fact that our next speaker, Andrew Edwards, has had close to 20 meetings with Council, and somehow this justifies the consultation process. Mr Edwards represents dozens of property owners that have multiple legitimate concerns. These people are the ones to contribute to council finances in a significant way and are major stakeholders. One major stakeholder has been publicly disparaged by certain councillors for daring to question this process. This is disgraceful and simply not how you would expect an organisation to treat a major stakeholder. As for justifications, all we have asked is for data and studies related to the financial implications to businesses in Hobart and the surrounding CBD. The Council has admitted these studies do not exist. The 2-year trial is going to be the study. The Council claims that the cities of Geelong, Bendigo and Dunedin as their source of justification. These cities have much wider streets and integrated public transport systems that we can only dream of. The more other cities are quoted, the more it reminds us that our own business data is lacking. In conclusion, the Hobart City Council needs to recognise that car access is a vital, accessible transport option and that current and proposed changes to the CBD are having a negative impact on visitor numbers and in turn hurting business. Also, changes to the CBD, like this Colins Street proposal, should not be looked at in isolation. So much parking has already been lost, especially around a hospital. It needs to be looked at as a whole. The Council should only put forward proposals that are practically addressed and when consultation is improved and the justifications are based on facts, not ideologies. Ideologies do not pay the bills. The only practical and sensible solution is to scrap this current proposal. So tonight I encourage you to send the Council a strong message and vote for motions 1, 3 and 4. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Edwards, and as Edwin has introduced me, I won't say any more about that. The reference to the 20 communications I've had with Council, really the truth behind it is that 15 of those 20 have been repeated requests to Council to answer previously raised questions. However, I want to refer to the integrity and matters relating to the process of this job. On November the 11th, I raised a question in Council which said, will the Council stand by their honesty and integrity in making decisions in relation to specific public proposals? i.e., will every statement that Council issues be factually correct and honestly researched? The answer that came back to me after I had to write to get an answer says, yes, the City of Hobart is committed to upholding its values of people, teamwork, focus and direction, creativity and innovation, and to address your question on accountability where we are transparent, work to a high ethical and professional standards and are accountable for our community. I asked the second question, will the Council make decisions based on empirical, justifiable and recognised basis of information? The answer was, The City of Hobart makes decisions based on professional advice, research, evaluation and data to progress work that achieves the outcomes set out in the community vision. They are the fundamental questions I wish to discuss. The fundamental question here is the integrity and trust the public attaches to Council's decision-making processes, amplified by the matter in hand at the moment. To begin with, Council did not even consider who are the users of the corridor. Pedestrians, cyclists, trades, couriers, employers, employees, patients, customers, etc. The reason they use the corridor, the frequency of use, the duration, the occupation of curbside parking, duration of same and time of day. Who are the majority of users? The question was raised with Council on the 13th of February in correspondence to them, and it's a question that any prudent researcher would immediately identify to be answered. By refusing to acknowledge the effect on others implies that they have no responsibility to the public, to the elderly, to the food outlets, to the health services providers, and all being ratepayers to whom the Council has a contractual obligation to not derogate from providing support infrastructure. The term consulting has been bandied about as if it was a panacea for all ills. In fact, I think Council misunderstood the word consulting. To consult means to seek advice. I think there's a fudging, not a fudging deliberately, with the word communication. Both those topics were addressed at a public meeting on the 31st of October, and both were outlined by the public there to have failed. The consulting process was non-effective. The communication process was poor. Council has stated, as Neil Noy pointed out, there are 7 metrics to be determined the effect of the wider public and ratepayers. They have said there will be one set presented before installation commences. It has commenced, but yet no parameters have been forthcoming. I ask the question, why not? This is again a question that has not been empirically answered, despite the numerous questions. There's been no research, no empirical studies, no determination of the effect on others, no intellectual rigour applied to all the assertions. For example, that because it has happened there, it will be good for you, even asserting that it will increase your business by 20%, but then denying that business turnover, orders, transactions are an obvious basis for measuring the effect of this change.
We did give Council a few minutes leeway, but I will ask you to wind up.
Thank you. In summary, I'd like to refer to the meeting last Monday and the officers' report on the workshop, and I say that the workshop conducted following Councillor Harvey's motion to conduct same on the Victoria Murray Street section is probably a bit of light at the end of this tunnel. The officers' report said the allocation of public road space is an area of Council's responsibilities as a road and transport manager that requires professionals to weigh up competing interests when asked to provide recommendation to Council's elected decision makers. Noting these insights, City of Hobart officers have developed an updated design proposal that takes into consideration all this feedback. Can we trust the Council to endorse this professional advice from their officers next week? We'll see what happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Edwin and Andrew for your contributions. So we'll now move into the contributions from the floor. So there will be an opportunity, if people so wish, to ask questions of the officers on stage. But I will ask again that you keep your contributions short and succinct, so that we can get through as many as possible within this half-hour block. I can see that there's a bit of interest, so we'll do our best to get through as many speakers as we can. When you come to the microphone, please state your first name and suburb for the purposes of the minutes. And I will ask again that we allow people to speak and make their points in silence. And thank you all for your decorum to date. So I will start with the opportunity for those on my right. So we'll ask for a speaker for the proposal to come forward.
Is it on? Yes. Can you hear me?
We've got audio over here.
Is that better?
That's better.
Yeah. Okay. So my name's Anna Johnston. I live in Lena Valley. I'm a mother, I'm a doctor, I'm a cyclist, I'm a driver, and I'm strongly in favour of this proposal. So I guess coming back to why we want the separated cycle lanes, pedestrians and cyclists have a right to feel frightened by cars, and unfortunately 4 pedestrians were killed in Tasmania last year, and almost 50 pedestrians and cyclists were seriously injured by cars. And as Neil pointed out in his excellent overview of the project, about 35% of people would like to ride a bicycle, but they don't because of these concerns. So I think really like safety for all road users, not just not just drivers, but also pedestrians and cyclists, is a sort of key pillar of this project. I guess the other point is that we know that from Australian road data that the road toll actually increased, and it's reached a 12-year high last year, and most of the increase across Australia was from pedestrians and cyclists being unfortunately injured by cars. So they're real concerns, and we all have the right to feel safe on the streets and to get to our workplaces and to do all the things that we do safely. So I think this proposal forms a sort of key pillar of people being able to get around Hobart in a safe manner. At my workplace, I see lots of doctors and nurses and all sorts of people bringing their children on the back of their cargo bike. And I'm sure you would agree with me that we want this to be a place where those children can get to their childcare or their school safely and not be knocked off their bike. I'd also like to point out that increasingly we have all these chronic health problems, which unfortunately are increasing rather than diminishing, and where we all need the opportunity to move more. So as a doctor, I see that this really promotes active transport. This promotes Hobart being a much healthier, a much safer city. And I guess I'm sure others will talk about the benefits in terms of just making Colins Street a much nicer place. So I really encourage you to vote yes, because I think this is a great trial and we'd all like to see it come to fruition soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll now take a speaker against.
Thank you very much. I don't think I'll get the claps the other side. Just give that speaker. My name's Jeff Briscoe. I have 4 points to make and I'll ask 3 questions. One I'll answer. Firstly, I support bike paths. I was the chair of the State Government Bicycle Advisory Committee for a number of years. When on council, I advocated and had a fair bit to do with the Sandy Bay bike path, the extension of the intercity cycleway, and was the major champion for the community for the shared path around the Battery Point foreshore. As Councillor Passelt has recently confirmed, the current proposal is principally for the exclusive benefit of South Hobart residents. Councillor Purcell is the chair of the Hobart City Council Mobility Committee and a member of various bike lobby groups. First question I have is, what happened, Councillor Purcell, to making decisions for the benefit of the whole community? The second point I'd like to make is about the actual need. There is woeful data available to determine the actual need for a dedicated cycle lanes in Collins Street. But from what I can determine, 100 or so, although it's been claimed 415 or so, South Hobart cyclists share their bike path along the linear park in the morning with about 500 people who walk less return in the afternoon. Collins Street is presently the safest street for cycling in Hobart. The city is taking the public on a ride. At Mole Street, the cyclists cross the fairly recently installed traffic lights for safe entry to Collins Street. They can use the road with the slow vehicle traffic or either use either of the footpaths or the new, if the dedicated bike paths are built. Other than that, there are very few parking spots left. They'll have a clear and presumably a happy 700-metre run before rejoining the car traffic as been outlined by Mr. Noy. A side benefit, or is it? During most of the day and at night, Collins Street up to Murray Street will be free of cyclists and almost no parked cars. Amazingly, $4.3 million to complete is the outrageous sum asked by the Mayor to federal government to complete the project end of last year. So to the Mayor and her faction, is this the top priority for funding of projects for the city? There'll be no trial of just using a marked footpath between Mole and Barrack Street, no trial of shared lanes, and if I just have a bit of indulgence just to finish.
20 seconds.
Why are these reasonable alternatives not been trialled? The answer, the 7 ruling councillors do not compromise, do not take up various sensible suggestions from the 5 councillors, Bloomfield, Kelly, Elliott, Zuko and Coates. The 7 do not know what to compromise.
I think we can move
as
on.
They display willful stubbornness and a very unhealthy situation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your contribution. As I said, we are trying to hold to time fairly across the board to get through as many speakers. So I'll move back to my right.
Thank you, Michael. I'm Ben Clark and I'm here representing the South Hobart Sustainable Community Group, which has over 420 members, many of whom are in the audience tonight. Our group recognises that transitioning to a sustainable way of life is one of this century's greatest challenges, and transport's one area where we can all make a difference. Last winter, in response to the Council's concept design for Collins Street, we organised 2 community rides to show our support. We were overwhelmed by the response, with hundreds of participants, including adults in their 80s and children as young as 4 pedalling with their parents. Afterwards, many of those parents said they'd love to ride with their kids into the city more often, but either didn't feel safe on the street or fear the criticism that they get about endangering their kids by making them or allowing them to ride on the street. And as Neil's presentation showed, they're not alone. So that report he referenced, the National Walking and Cycling Participation Study 2023, showing that only 5% of Hobartians are confident riding in traffic. I think that the thing here is there's a massive opportunity. 16% of Hobartians are cautious, so those are the ones that'll ride occasionally, but they'll avoid busy routes. And it's the 35% that are interested in cycling, but only on off-road or on protected lanes like this proposal is. So combined, they make up 51% of the residents in our LGA, so that equates to over 28,000 residents across Hobart LGA. that would be encouraged to use an all ages and ability proposal like this. And when you consider that the average trip time in Hobart is 19 minutes, it makes active transport a very attractive alternative if we provide the supporting infrastructure. Traffic congestion is a hot topic in Hobart, and as we all know, the topography of our river and our mountains make it really difficult and expensive to build more roads. Increasing active transport is a viable solution. In the past 20 years, the South Hobart community has increased its cycle to work rate from 2% in 2001 to 7% in 2021. And over that same 2 decades, there's been a corresponding decrease in our driving to work rate. So it's dropped from 56% to 46%. And it hasn't happened by luck, it's been an outcome of the Rivulet Linear Park. And also just bear in mind that the census is in August, so that's our coldest month of the year. We also just want to note nearly 10% of the Hobart's LGA's households don't have a registered vehicle. This proposal improves transport choices for those households. Not all members of our community are able-bodied, and some have long-term health conditions that limit their mobility. The provision of, or the increased provision of dedicated accessible on-street parks and mobility scooters using those lanes to transit
Thank you, Ben.
An improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll now take another speaker from my left.
Good evening. I'm Dennis McLaughlin. I actually have been a cyclist in Hobart since 1958, and I started being a professional cyclist in 1961, and I still ride today. I've been riding all today. But I delivered medicines for McLeod Pharmacy in North Hobart in grade 4 and 5. So a 9-year-old boy managed to ride into Kodak every night, go up to Watchorn Street and then up to Warwick Street to Drug House of Australia to pick up the medicines, take them back to North Hobart, and then I would deliver medicines all around Hobart. In the 1960s, Hobart was far busier than it is today because we didn't have regional centres. Riding a bike around Hobart is not difficult. It's actually not very dangerous. I've never seen... Well, they ride on the footpath mostly, so that's why all the pedestrian statistics are getting quoted. Anyway, I'm also a business owner in Hobart and a property owner in Hobart. And above my bike riding, I mean, everybody rides bikes. These people think they're special. Every family rides bikes. But 85% of them, when they want something in the city, come in cars with their children, with their husbands, and they need their cars to take the goods back home. Nobody on the Eastern Shore can come to Hobart on their bike because if you've ridden across the bridge, you'll see it's almost impossible to ride a wide-handled bike. And as that man over there proved, you know, your cargo bike's a bit problematic as well. So, you know, I'm absolutely outraged at this small elite group from South Hobart and their little... and the gang of 7 who are mainly from South Hobart, who are taking over our city, driving our customers away to the regional shopping centres. Yeah, I know, they find it funny. They find it funny that all the little shop owners and all the business owners and all the property owners that have been doing this in the city for 200 years are now having... Yeah, see, they find it funny. They don't care about business. In fact, they're the authors of the Hobart Precincts Plan, which is 108 pages of absolute drivel and not anywhere in it. It's all about the precincts of Hobart and nowhere in it are businesses mentioned. They have no interest in business, even though the businesses and through the property owners pay the highest rates in Hobart. These people are happy to trash these businesses by taking away Their customer parking.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
Has the bell gone?
It has.
I thought that was a lady.
No, you're on a roll, but the bill did ring. Thank you. So if we have time, you're welcome to go back to the back of the line, and we can go again. Thank you. We'll now move back to my right.
Thank you. My name is Kate. I'm from Sandy Bay, and in 2020 I started riding my bike in Hobart. I had a push bike, and I would ride from Sandy Bay to North Hobart to go to work each day. I often stop in many of the businesses along the way, and the parking is great if you're on a bike. So thank you to all the business owners who have those excellent businesses that I love to frequent every week on my way to and from work. And I'd really like to thank Council for the separated bike paths that have come in on Argyle Street. It has made my ride so much safer. I feel confident that I can get to work safely. And I really love the ones coming down on Campbell Street, which again, great separation so that people don't open their car doors onto me. And as a car driver, I really love the separated cycle paths because that means that when I'm driving, I'm not worried about hitting cyclists. I don't have to check whether they're somehow in my blind spot. They're separated, they're somewhere else, and I love the separated bike paths. Thank you so much, Council.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Maria Riedel. I live in Battery Point, and we've got a farm in Huonville, so I go back and forth. I protest in front of Parliament, dragging signs in the back of my car because I have to. Now, electoral polls are used when an issue divides the community and the city wishes to seek guidance from the community with a yes and no vote on a topic. Taken from the community engagement framework, this is the only fair way forward. It is clear that of the 2,983 people who responded to the Mercury's Big Issue survey, 35.3% said they supported the Collins Street bike path. Whilst 64.7% opposed it, and the rapid proliferation of bike lanes to the detriment of our ageing community. I'm old. Having read the Midson Traffic Technical Assessment, January 2025, it is clear that the Collins Street proposal is going to add to the congestion via the removal of vital turning lanes, and that's near Fuller's, because you can turn right, left, or straight ahead, at each intersection plays an important role in providing short-term parking to support nearby businesses, e.g. Centrepoint Car Park, and resulting in ramping within the car park, thus increasing delays in and out of the car park. Removal of on-street parking is not offset by off-street parking because the usage patterns differ. They're different. A lot of false, biased information has been promoted by councillors at meetings, because I've been to a few, and I mean constantly in the media, e.g., the Collins Street needs calming, and that lots of people will bicycle, and this will force people to exercise, which a councillor promises by rushing it through and refusing to consult in a meaningful, proper manner, refusing to face the realities such as elderly, infirm, mentally disabled as well, and those who come to pick up goods from local businesses. I went into one of the shops today and they were delivering it to the older lady in the car right outside, which would disappear. So, in fact, disregarding the realities faced by local businesses is simply bad governance. Direct consultation is missing. The businesses say they were not consulted properly, and this is the central business district. It is not the central bicycling district. Also, bike lanes don't improve the CBD for businesses. it's false that it does. There's been an aggressive push for the dual bike lanes, actively dividing my community. I look at bicyclists and I am very concerned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and my name is Helen Burnett. I'm a resident of North Hobart, and I'm speaking to you today as a resident and a bike rider and a car driver. These bike lanes are a really important thing as a car driver, because as a car driver I want certainty to know where bikes are. Having fewer cars on the road, having more cyclists on the road is a much better thing, not only to bust the congestion, which we all face every morning coming in if we're driving, but it's also to reduce climate emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. So it's an antidote for climate change, and it's a really important component for any modern city, and this is what Hobart needs to come to terms with. As a driver, I do want that certainty, and having bike lanes is where I know bike riders are. And the flip side, as a bike rider, having that safety of a bike lane is so much better. And we've heard how Argyle Street and Campbell Street, those bike lanes in from North Hobart into the city make it so much safer. It's just so much safer to ride in dedicated bike lanes. I want to talk about two young people because we've talked a little bit about safety, and safety is really important. So I want to talk about my husband's daughter. She's a teacher. She graduated a few years ago, and she was riding home from school one day, and she was knocked off because a parked car opened their door. She was fortunate only to have a fractured elbow. She missed some school, but she could get on her bike again, so she was pleased to be able to do that. Another person, a young person, a friend's son, who's a health professional who works at the Royal Hobart Hospital, had a collision recently with a car driver. These were incidents that happened because there were no bike lanes. We need safety for everybody. We need safety for all people. So please support these bike lanes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Chris Merridew, and I rode a bike to school, and I contended with trams and buses and the occasional suburban train. But when I rode my bike, I always looked in the back window of the car to see if there was a driver and whether he was moving towards opening the door. And I'm sorry about your niece. Oh, sorry, your daughter. But the situation is now that we are looking at statistics tonight which are from Victoria, which has got trams and buses and trains. Why are we looking at Victorian statistics? I can tell you the Tasmanian statistics from the Hobart City Council's annual report, and it reads, people moving into the city of Hobart, visiting the city, 59% come by car. No surprise. 9% come by bus. 7% walk, and 2% come by bike. Now that's from the Council's annual report. I'm prepared to believe those figures because each morning for many years I'm walking on Sandy Bay Road, and especially when this has been evident this last few weeks, beautiful weather for bike riding, and I count on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, which is sort of the peak day for coming into town, and I count 100 motor vehicles, say 1.6 passengers, 50 passengers on a bus, and I will count 4 or 5 bikes on that same traffic cycle, morning after morning. So it is 2% of the bikes on the Sandy Bay Road bike path. They've got a shared footpath outside Breast Point, hardly ever used by bikes, used by pedestrians, and we hope they ring the bell when they do pass us on those conditions. Now, so You can prove anything with statistics, as Mr. Noy gave us in international and interstate statistics. This is the Hobart position. Now, we have got the Meehan Road. Mr. Meehan designed the roads in the city 160 years ago, when we had the population of 30,000 people. We've now got a population of roughly 160,000, and we only had a few carts and certainly a lot of horses. Those roads are all we have got to use and share. Now, since Argyle Street has been operating, which was brought in John Freeman's time, I sat in the Mercedes-Benz showroom for 8 years of that period, and I would log, as I was on the phone looking out the window, the number of cyclists that went past. It was about 12 a day, and that was day after day, week after week, year after year. So you cannot work on the premise, build it, they will use it. That clearly has not happened. May I ask a question of Mr. Noy? He will probably answer it later. That is, I want to know why we cannot have an in-lane in the morning and an out-lane in the afternoon, like a clearway for cyclists in Colins Street. We cannot, he's given 23, does not answer that question. Now, the other question is that this council is very concerned about pollution.
Very quickly.
It's not mentioned in the report. My question of Mr. Noy's second question is, and I've asked this before, can you tell me how much more exhaust pollution shall be created by 2,800 cars per day coming out of the CCP and having only one lane outside Artery there, which if they want to go up Collins Street, they will share with all the traffic that wants to go to Newtown, West Hobart, Bathurst Street.
Thank you.
The traffic that wants to go to South Hobart.
Thank you.
Huonville.
I will invite Mr. Noy to either, if there wants to respond to that question or take that on notice, but unfortunately your time has expired.
Yeah, look, I've answered your second question, Chris, and so I won't repeat that here tonight. But in relation to your first question, that was considered by council but was rejected because they wanted to provide a AAA safety solution both ways at all times of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. We probably have time for one last contribution for and one against, if we keep things short. So,
yes, good evening. My name is Mark and I'm from Lindisfarne, but I'm here representing the Hobart Bike Kitchen. And the Hobart Bike Kitchen has been providing bikes to many of our community for the last 15 years. However, before I just get to my original thoughts, I'll just comment on a couple of the anecdotes from the other side. I come to the city on my bicycle. I'm able to purchase a bottle of wine and put it in the backpack, a book, go to a business and use your services on your bicycle. We do not need cars, do not buy services. People use your goods and services. As to Mr. Meehan's design of Hobart, however long ago it was, I believe London, Paris, many other cities were designed well before that time and they've been able to accommodate bike lanes on a much grander scale than we're talking about. But to my original intention, I just wanted to share some of the experience that Hobart Bike Kitchen has had. Our users are often either new to the city or unable to afford a bike by other means, so we're dealing with many people who are experiencing cycling in Hobart for the first time. We've currently been in Davey Street and we're moving further into South Hobart currently. So often the conversation has been how hard it is to get there. This is how hard to get to Davey Street or South Hobart. We do not have a connected cycle network that provides the ability for people to move up and down our city. Some time ago, the state government actually had a state architect. One of his KPIs was that a child in West Hobart or South Hobart should be able to cycle to the swimming pool. If we cannot provide that basic level of service for our children, we are certainly failing our community. We've already, the maps provided at the beginning of the presentation highlight how this is a missing link in our cycling network. Not only does it allow people to travel to Collins Street, it widens up the whole city as a cycling, I hate to say mecca, but as an environment where a cyclist is treated as a valid member of the community, and we all benefit, whether we drive a car, we ride the public transport, or we ride a bicycle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll now hear from one last speaker against.
Jonathan Elliott, West Hobart, and I love bikes. I've raced across continents. I've sponsored Tasmania's national cycling team. I've directed an annual cycling event raising money for charity, and I ride the Soho Trails weekly, and I tow my kids to childcare. For years, I've ridden to work most days, into the city via Mole and Colins to my business a few metres off Collins Street. Our clients are varied and include time-poor business owners and elderly retirees. They need ease of accessibility, which is why our business is in the central business district. Take away Collins Street parking and it makes accessibility for our clients exponentially more difficult. I like bike lanes, just like the group over here, but bike lanes in the right place, and Collins Street bike lanes are not solving a problem. Climate impact and efficiency is nonsense. Business consultation has been a sham. According to the City Mobility Committee Chair, Councillor Ryan Purcell, the South Hobart metric is important because the Collins Street proposal pretty well exclusively services South Hobartians, quote, "Cyclists, if you feel unsafe on Collins Street, don't ride on it. You have a choice. Many others don't. We shouldn't wreck the city's core accessibility to cotton wool your confidence." Bicycle Network Tasmania call themselves cycling advocates, prioritising able-bodied people's desires over the needs of the businesses, less mobile citizens, and people who simply want choice is arrogant, elite activism. This arrogance was also demonstrated by Councillor Ryan Purcell on the Tasman Bridge, making a disabled pedestrian...
I think there's been a couple of personal comments. I think we just make our points without resorting to individuals.
The council commencing work yesterday, despite this meeting today, is the proverbial middle finger. This is bad economics and poor governance. Council is ripping out parking, tossing away their own revenue, and dipping into the city's emergency funds to fund their green cafe utopia. Even as the aquatic centre roof could blow off any windy day now. This isn't leadership from council. It's disdain for businesses and visitors to the city. It's ideology over function, and this is your city. Don't let elite minority dictate how we live in it. Vote for motions 1, 3 and 4.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now, I do apologise for speakers on both sides. We have run out of time for questions and contributions. Look, to be fair to everybody in this room, we did say that this meeting would conclude at 7:30. We have got 4 motions to get through on the agenda. That is going to take some time. And so in order to allow everybody to get out at the time that we previously advertised, we'll now move into the motions, and I would ask you to please take your seats. No, sorry. The meeting rules were set down well in advance of this meeting. All right, I did say if there are people with accessibility issues, we will hear from the speaker with accessibility issues. We did say at the start, but there will be no further speakers after that point. You're perfectly welcome to real dissent, but that is out of order. The meeting rules have been set. This is not a council meeting, it's a public meeting. We have got an agenda that we're going to keep to. So if this lady would like to speak, she will have her speaking rights. We will then move into motions, and that is my ruling. I will call for order, and if people can't come to order, I will ask you to leave the meeting. We have had 5 speakers for, 5 speakers against, and we're about to hear from a 6th speaker against. I'm not sure that that could be deemed to be unfair. So please, let's allow this person to be heard in silence. Thank you.
What I really want to know is why the bike riders think they are unsafe. It is actually the motor vehicle drivers who cannot see them because they are not obliged to wear high vis. And quite frankly, you cannot see them very often, and they are putting themselves at risk. They do not pay any insurance or registration. A good man. There's one only. Okay? And the data you're talking about is rubbish, because I go to a hairdresser on Colins Street. I'm very vain. But I need to park outside, and the actual Lord Mayor told me that there's a car park not far away, but I can't walk. I need to park outside the hairdresser because I need to go there every week, okay?
Okay.
Data has been collected from elsewhere. Please listen to your ratepayers.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Data is not on the electoral roll.
Thank you. Look, I do appreciate that there is some frustration with the time that is allowed for those contributions, but I hope that the meeting will see that we are attempting to try and provide a balance of views, and I believe that we've done that, and I thank everybody for their contributions. We will now move to motions. So given that some motions that were submitted have been consolidated, what I'll do is I'll call for a mover and a seconder from the floor. If you'd like to move the motion, please stand and I will ask your name. I will then call for a seconder and ask their name for the purposes of the minutes. The mover of the motion will have 3 minutes to speak in favour of the motion. I will then ask one person to speak against, again for a maximum of 3 minutes. And finally, the mover will have 1 minute to sum up if they choose, and I will allow for the mover to cede those rights to another individual should they wish to again allow as many people to speak as possible. Finally, we will call for a vote by a show of hands. If I can't see a clear outcome via a show of hands, we'll move to a count. If this occurs, please be patient while staff move through the room, counting a show of hands and undertaking a tally. So now we're clear on the process. I'll start with motion 1, which is displayed on the screen. Motion 1, that the meeting supports no installation of bike lanes on Colins Street. Can I have a mover for this motion? So Edwin to move. Can I have a seconder? Seconder to this gentleman. And your name? Jodie Facina. Thank you. Now, I will hear from the mover.
Thank you. I speak to the motion that the meeting supports no installations of bike lanes on Colins Street. As I have stated before, this proposal has serious flaws as identified by the Midson report. The report states that this proposal is not warranted and is heavily biased towards bicycle policy on a street that already caters for cyclists in a relatively safe manner. a street that is about to be 30 kilometres an hour. Worse, this report finds that bike lanes will lead to more crashes, traffic delays and negative impacts on traders, and a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars in parking revenue to the council. The proposal also does not have broad public or stakeholder support. Hobart's CBD hangs in the balance, with congestion issues that can only be solved with well thought out plans and a much improved public transport system. That is where we need to focus our energies, not on proposals that are going to make things worse for the gain of so few. If the council wants to go ahead with this or any proposals in the future, they need to put proposals forward that are based on local data and relevant studies, have adequate stakeholder engagement and have broad community support. This project clearly does not fit into any of those criteria, so it should be totally shelved so other options can be canvassed. Options that do not cut swathes of accessible parking out of our main business area of a capital city. So again, I call for this proposal to be scrapped. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a speaker against. Please state your name.
We do. Can you hear me? Yes. My name's Bruce Levitt. I'm from South Hobart. I'm an owner of 2 cars. I'm a passionate cyclist. Look, thank you. And businesses, we do actually hear your concerns. But look, all the evidence supports that the bike lanes will not impact your business, regardless of what you're saying right now. As cyclists, we are not anti-business. We support businesses that we love in Collins Street. I personally use a dentist. I get my car serviced from a person over here in Collins Street. I'm a frequent shopper at Fuller's Bookstore, buy puzzles next door at Archery, and my partner gets a haircut in Collins Street as well. We, like many here today, are part of your community. As a person who has worked across 2 industry development departments in 2 different states, my advice to businesses in good faith is that you'll face both a commercial and a reputational risk by blocking these cycleways. Because if you vote no now, all this will mean is that you'll be back here in 3 years' time fighting the same fight again. Next time, you'll be up against the full force of State Growth, Mac Point Development Corporation, Stadiums Tasmania and AFL Tasmania. Because this cycleway is critical to their transport plan. If you hadn't noticed, in order to make that stadium functional, they need 25% of those attending a concert or an event to use active transport. They plan to build an active transport bridge across the Brooker and Tasman highways ending in Collins Street, and they need mechanisms, safe mechanisms to move people from those events. So I suggest that they will actually be very keen to build the cycleway that for some reason you're objecting to at the moment. Look, my advice, as someone who has worked in industry and in business, is that you should support this trial project. It's a trial project. You have 2 years to work with council to iron out any issues that you may encounter, and you'll collect the local data that you insist on, which I think is really important. I guarantee you saving 35 car parks will not stop those building the stadium wanting the cycleway as well. Unfortunately, you have been poorly advised by the Confederation and the politics behind this motion today. Most people support a stadium, but then you have to also, you can't ignore the supporting infrastructure around it. Your Confederation does not understand the people in South Hobart and the people that go up and down Collins Street, and this is a reputational risk to all businesses that operate in Collins Street. Nor does your Confederation understand the vast quantity of research that identifies the benefits of bicycle lanes have on people's health and well-being and the benefits they also bring local businesses.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Edwin, would you like your 1 minute to sum up?
I'd just like to say that businesses do understand. We understand exactly what's going on. One thing that's been said that we're afraid of change. One thing that you need to understand, that anyone who's in small business knows exactly what change is, and they're not afraid of change. What they're afraid of is going into proposals that have got no facts, zero credibility, and are not going to help our city at all. So when we talk about people on bikes and we talk about the stadium, I brought it up in my opening. The best way to get people to that stadium is on one of those big tin cans that holds 65 people. It's called a bus. That's what we need. That's what we should be focusing our energies on. More public transport. And when we talk about veiled threats, I will say this. I run a business group. It's called the Confederation of Greater Hobart Business. We have members, and our members have been targeted by this side. And you should all be ashamed of yourself. Absolutely ashamed.
Thank you. So I will now put the motion that... No, and again, the meeting rules have been set down in advance. No, look, the speaking rules were circulated well in advance of the meeting. Speaking rights for the mover, one speaker against, and then the mover to sum up. They are the rules. We will stick with the rules. Thank you. I will now put the motion to the meeting that the meeting supports no installation of bike lanes on Colins Street. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And those against? I declare the motion lost. Thank you. We'll now move to motion 2 on the agenda, that the meeting supports the Collins Street trial as endorsed by the City of Hobart on 16 September 2024. And can I have a mover for this motion? Yes. And a seconder? This gentleman here. And we'll have the mover to speak.
Thank you. My name's Alison Hetherington and I'm here on behalf of Bicycle Network. We have an office in Collins Street on one of the blocks that the trial is happening on, so we're very invested in this as well as representing bike riders. I'm going to talk about safety because, as you might have gathered, that's what's motivating the separated bike lanes on Collins Street. Separated bike lanes can help prevent deaths and prevent serious injuries. Last year in Tasmania, as Anna said before, we had close to 50 serious injuries of pedestrians and people riding. Now, some people can bounce back from a serious injury, like I think Helen said with her daughter-in-law. But other people have to take months off work when they're injured. And for other people, they're left with a lifetime disability, things like amputations and brain injuries. So this is a serious thing we're talking about. Separated bike lanes are used now around the world and around Australia. They're part of what is called the safe systems approach. And that approach recognises we're all human. We all make mistakes. So when we're driving, it's much better to hit a barrier or a bollard and damage your car than damage another human being. The other benefit of separated bikeways is that research has found that it benefits all road users. When separated bike lanes are put into streets, crash statistics show that people walking, riding and driving suffer fewer crashes. So that's another reason that they're put in. We've heard before, we heard from Neil before talking about propensity to ride. So that's saying that we have, some current riders, and a lot of them are here tonight, but there are many more people in the population who are open to the idea of riding, but they're too nervous to ride in traffic. And so the separated bike lanes give them that comfort that they don't have to worry about being sideswiped by a car or a parked car door opening in front of them. We've also heard about the 30-kilometre streets, and 30-kilometre streets do have a place in our cycling infrastructure design guidelines that have been released recently by the government, but that's for very low vehicle numbers, and Collins Street is not there yet. We have too many vehicle movements to make that what we call an all ages and abilities route. And that means, you know, your 8-year-old daughter, your 80-year-old grandmother should be able to ride that route and feel comfortable. Now, we don't debate other road safety approaches as though they're optional or based on public opinion. We don't do that for traffic lights or seatbelt use. Why would we do it with separated bike lanes? Because separated bike lanes are a road safety measure. It's for these safety reasons that I ask this public meeting to support the motion to support the Collins Street trial as approved on 16th of September by the Hobart City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before I seek a speaker against the motion, I neglected to get the name of the seconder for the minutes. I've got that recorded. Thank you. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Jodie Facina. Just at this microphone.
Thanks. So I rise to oppose what is one of the most ridiculous programs or ridiculous proposals here, basically to turn the city of Hobart into a CBD wasteland. Let me declare up front though, I mean, I've come here tonight as a resident of the Eastern Shore. Such is my anger at this proposal, and while I appreciate I'm not a ratepayer of Hobart, I am a citizen of the greater Hobart area like many other people here. And I have a stake in the future of this city. And what we are seeing is a green-led radical council out of control, trying to impose their will, their philosophical, ideological extremism on the rest of us. And that's what I oppose in the main. This council is no better than Imperial Russia before the fall of the Tsarists. And it's led by a Tsarina mayor and her six green lemming followers.
I will ask that you refrain from any personal reflections, please.
No, that wasn't a personal reflection, and I apologise if truth is an offence. So the point being, and I haven't heard any Greens here tonight and any people here, as I look around this audience and survey it, the number of seniors in this room. And what this council wants to do is see those seniors on a bike get to their medical appointments, get to their specialist appointments, get to hospital. When you're bedridden with cancer, having cancer treatment, I see all these people rise and laugh at sick people. Well done, the Greens, the party of compassion, the party of equality, making light of sick people being able to get to hospital, being able to get to their doctor, being able to get to their specialist. It says it all. This council is out of control. They don't care about you. So at the next election, I say, don't care about them and vote them out.
Thank you. Thank you. Does the mover wish to sum up or cede speaking rights to the seconder? Thank you.
Quickly, is this on? Can you hear me? I'm a resident in a small business of 30 years in Collins Street. I shop and I eat in Collins Street every day. In that time, I've observed small business. I've shared small business with 6 other companies and observed multiple unsafe movements with cyclists taking evasive action, abusive language, and aggressive driving. Separation is safe. There is no better option. Footpaths are insufficient to be shared as indicated by the geofencing of scooters and skateboards, and then it's illegal to ride your bikes go on a footpath in the CBD. Build it and they will come. No one used the intercity cycleway until it was built, and I support the trial. It is a trial, and I wholly endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'll now put the motion that the meeting supports the Collins Street trial as endorsed by the City of Hobart on 16 September 2024. All those in favour say aye and raise your hands. All those against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to motion 3 on the agenda, that the Hobart City Council A, note the valid and widespread concerns regarding the Collins Street paths on both sides of the road, which eliminates the majority of parking, and B, immediately rescind the decision to implement the current plan, and C, implement a shared bike and car plan from Mole to Victoria Streets, similar to what has been proposed for Murray to Victoria Streets, with a 30km/h speed limit. And D, provide all collected data on current car and bike movements on Collins Street in a format easily read by the public. And E, enable an elector poll to be held subject to associated statutory requirements being met. Can I have a mover for that motion, please? Mr. Briscoe. And a seconder? And your name for the minutes? Thank you, Maria Biggle. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I almost anticipate what the vote will be because of the vote of the other previous two motions. But I'd like to, the person who couldn't speak earlier because of the rules set by the Hobart City Council didn't allow people to speak. There was a gentleman that was waiting here for half an hour. Is that person here? Because I'm happy for him to speak. Yes, would you like to speak about the bike path now? Rather than me speaking, I'll do a sum up.
Are we happy with? I think for the purposes of the meeting, if you would like to sum up, but I think the mover has the speaking rights for the motion. Thank you.
I'd like to transfer my time to the speaker who's going to sum up. I want my time to. However, just as a matter of process, this was my motion. The council, in its wisdom, added point E. That wasn't part of my motion. I asked it to be a separate motion. The council refused. I'm afraid this meeting is rigged. But I'll hand over my time over to... Rob. Thanks, Rob.
So, this is against the rules. I will indulge because I do recognise that you haven't had the opportunity to speak. I will ask, though, that if the movers to the last motion allow, if we have the mover speak to the motion, that does allow for everybody to have clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You can have the remainder of the time.
Okay, thank you. In simple terms, before I was not able to speak earlier, this is the compromise that I think we needed. I'm a bike rider, like all of you people over there. I do get frightened riding in the city, the same as you do. But are we going to constrict our city so it does not become a viable city? I was just walking down Campbell Street to come to this meeting, and four bicycles passed me. Hundreds of cars tried to pass me, but they were jam-packed, they couldn't get through. And an ambulance we walked 2.5 blocks before the ambulance cleared to get through. So we are constricting the city by having the bike lanes. I'm arguing that if we can come up with a compromise where you win, we win, the traders in the central business district of Hobart still get to run their business and trade profitably, so that this doesn't become a desert in the middle of the city, because nobody can get in here. So that's my story, so thank you.
Thank you. And a speaker against the motion? No speaker against? Oh. Okay. Please state your name for the minutes.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Burgess. I'm a small business owner from South Hobart, which until today I didn't realise was a bad thing. But anyway, that was something I found out today. Look, I'm going to... This has been fun, hasn't it? I think Hobart's coming last in livability terms nationwide from the National Livability Census. We're coming last in economic performances of all the capital cities. Our young people are leaving faster than we can grow them. Our competitive cities are flogging us. And Edwin sort of pointed out why that happens to be, because at the moment in our city, too many of us feel like we have to drive in. That's the problem you have to fix. It costs us, as a community, it costs us 8 times as much money to get someone in here by a car as by a bus, and way, way more than that if they ride a bike or walk. Every city that has less driving than you has got more money to spend on good stuff. You have to change. You're coming last. I grew up here, was born and bred here. I worked all over the world trying to fix cities, and they're kind of all doing it better than us. The city I grew up in and I love, if it falls off the vine just because we were too frightened to trial something, I'll be really sad. Just be brave, enjoy it, try it. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Does the mover wish to sum up?
Yes, the last speaker just confirmed in my mind we are the last. We have got fantastic advantages. Fantastic advantage. Advantage we have is that we can meet basically the public in front of us and talk individually to find a solution that we can all live with. The compromise of this motion is, and it come from the council itself, that we have a shared road from Victoria Street to Murray Street. Why not have it from Mole Street to Murray Street? That's a compromise we can all live with. And it came from the council. So let's please support this motion. Please support this motion. It's a compromise motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the meeting. All those in favour say aye and raise your hands. All those against? I declare the motion lost. So motion 4 on the agenda, that the council undertake and adhere to their stated criteria of conducting credible research and respect professional consultants' advice when council undertakes planning and policy decisions, and further, that they maintain a high ethical and transparent credible standard in respecting the effect of their decisions on all affected parties. Can I have a mover for this motion, please?
In addressing this...
and sorry, can I have a seconder before we move to...
Rob Windsor, second.
Thank you. Please speak.
In proposing this motion, I hearken back to my original comments in relation to questions I asked and the responses I received from council, basically relying on professional advice, research, evaluation of data to progress the work, and to look at the honesty and integrity in making decisions in relation to specific proposals. We've heard of the void of information. We've heard of the void of fundamental research in relation to this matter. If the council had adopted what the workshop it came out with 12 months ago, none of us would be sitting here. we would have it resolved in a more peaceful and more intellectual environment. And I would like to ensure that the Council take a message from this meeting that they undertake to adhere to their stated criteria in conducting credible research and respect professional consultants, which includes their staff, as well as the Midson report, as well as other demographic reports that are at hand, when Council undertakes planning and policy decisions, and further, that they maintain a high ethical and transparent, credible standard in respecting the effect of their decisions on all other parties.
Thank you. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Oh, I think I saw the man in the jacket at the back here first. Sorry.
Hey, my name's Liam. I'm from Taroona. I've got a lot of friends in South Hobart, and I travel up there, the Colins Street sort of route quite often. But out in Taroona about over 10 years ago, there was a cycleway proposal, and it was for separated lanes. The community wanted it. It had community consultation support. It had the engineering report support. We thought it was a case closed. But then somehow it got changed, so all we ended up with was painted lines on the road. And that meant my feeling of settling in Taroona was one day I'll be able to ride with my family into Hobart and back, but unfortunately it's still not safe to do so. I work as a nurse. When I first started working as a nurse, I worked in like the neurosurgical ward. So head injuries were my work. Every night I'd be up there cleaning out people's tracheostomies because they'd been in a high impact collision, whether it's in a car or on a bike, and a lot of them never regained functionality. And so my motivation at that time was if we can follow the expert advice from around the world that supports separation, and all the evidence points to it being the gold standard for both car users and bike riders. This motion talks about evidence. The evidence is unequivocally in support of separation. And so I strongly oppose this motion because the misinformation and the division that is in this room is unhealthy for our community, and it's not necessary for us to grow as a community and support everyone who's travelling by car, bike, walking, whatever. I strongly oppose this motion, and that's where it stands.
Thank you. Andrew, to sum up.
The motion is to ensure an ethical, researched, professional approach to any planning decisions. The voice against the motion referred to other evidence. I'm talking about the process the Council should be seen to be going through to arrive at decisions like we're debating tonight. That is the notice of the motion.
Thank you. I will put the motion to the meeting that the Council undertake and adhere to their stated criteria of conducting credible research and respect professional consultants' advice when Council undertakes planning and policy decisions, and further that they maintain a high ethical, transparent, credible standard in respecting the effect of their decisions on affected parties. All in favour, raise your hand and say aye. All against? I'm afraid I declare the motion lost on the hands. So that does bring us to the conclusion of motions, and therefore the conclusion of the meeting. I would like to thank everybody for coming along tonight and for your contributions to the meeting. It has been constructive, at times passionate, but great to see so many people coming out and having their say. Before everyone does leave, I think it is worth noting the next steps following tonight's meeting, and that is that council staff will prepare minutes from this meeting, which will be included in the minutes of the council's next ordinary meeting scheduled for Monday, 31st of March. And the minutes of the meeting tonight will include a summary of the submissions and the outcome of the motions. Thank you and travel safely.